I don't remember the exact moment my heart broke. Not the clean kind of heartbreak you see in movies, where there's a confrontation, a single moment of clarity, and then tears. Mine was messier. It didn't happen all at once. It cracked slowly, in fragments, as truth leaked in through the lies I had built my world around. My name is Angelina, and until a month ago, I thought I was in a relationship that, while imperfect, was built on love, understanding, and patience. 7 years. That's almost a decade of shared laughter, quiet nights, arguments that we always managed to fix, and promises that felt real. Or at least I believed they were. He was my best friend before he was my boyfriend. We started dating in our early 20s, when everything was new and full of possibility. Back then, love felt easy. We talked for hours, planned futures, and even named the dog we wanted to adopt one day. I used to think the strength of our bond could withstand anything: distance, stress, even time. But what I didn't realize was that time doesn't just test love, it exposes it. The first cracks appeared a year ago. He started growing distant, emotionally detached. The texts that once came every few hours turned into days of silence. His voice, which used to carry warmth, became cold and formal, like he was talking to a coworker, not his partner. When I asked what was wrong, he said it was career stress, that he was struggling with work pressure and didn't want to drag me into it. I believed him. Because that's what love does, right? It believes. It gives benefit of the doubt even when the heart whispers otherwise. I told myself he just needed time, that once his job stabilized, things would go back to how they were. So I waited. I stayed patient. I sent supportive messages, reminded him to eat, prayed for his success. I even started therapy myself, thinking maybe I was being too needy, too demanding, too much. But the truth was I wasn't too much. I was simply loving someone who had already checked out. The moment of realization came quietly, like the flick of a switch in the dark. I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't suspicious that day. I was just scrolling through social media when I saw a familiar name tagged in a story. A mutual friend had posted a picture from a gathering. My ex, smiling, sitting way too close to a girl I didn't recognize. Their hands brushed. The kind of touch that doesn't happen accidentally. I ignored it at first. Told myself I was overthinking. But something about her face felt familiar. I clicked her profile. That's when the ground under me shifted. Photo after photo. Him in the background, her in the foreground, subtle but constant. A coffee cup I recognized, a jacket I'd gifted him, captions that hinted at inside jokes I wasn't part of. I felt my chest tighten, the air leaving my lungs. I scrolled more. Then I saw it. A post from her a few months back. Some people just make you feel seen. And in the comments, his name. With a heart emoji. That one small symbol, a digital heart, shattered 7 years of my reality. I remember staring at the screen for what felt like hours. My hands were trembling, my throat dry. I wanted to scream, to throw my phone, to run. But instead, I just sat there frozen in disbelief. My mind replayed every conversation from the past year, every, "I'm just tired and I need space." It all made sense now. He wasn't tired. He wasn't stressed. He was in love, just not with me. The next few days were a blur. I confronted him, or at least tried to. I sent him a message asking about her. He replied after 5 hours like it didn't even matter, saying she was just a friend. That word, friend, has never sounded so cruel. I didn't argue. I didn't beg for the truth. Something inside me had already broken too deeply for that. Instead, I sent a short reply. I know enough. And I meant it. But knowing isn't the same as accepting. Acceptance is slower, crueler. It hits you at night when you're trying to sleep, when your brain replays old memories but edits them with new meanings. That movie we watched together? He texted her that same night. That busy day excuse? He was probably with her. Every small piece of history turns into evidence, and every memory becomes a lie. I found myself going through stages: denial, anger, confusion, grief, sometimes all within the same hour. I'd wake up fine, thinking I was over it, only to break down at a random song on the radio. And the worst part? I missed him. Even after everything, some part of me still craved his voice, his presence, his comfort, the very things he'd already given to someone else. I hated myself for that. I hated that after 7 years I was left here, second-guessing my worth while he walked away without a scratch. It's funny how love can turn into something so unrecognizable. How someone you trusted with your whole heart can become the reason you can't trust anyone at all. A friend once told me that heartbreak doesn't just change how you see love, it changes how you see yourself. I didn't understand it then, but now I do. Because after him, I don't just question love, I question my own judgment, my ability to read people, to trust, to open up again. Some nights I replay that last year, the lies, the red flags I ignored, the gut feelings I buried. And I wish I'd listened to myself. I wish I'd walked away before he turned me into an option. But I didn't, because I loved him. And maybe that's the cruelest part of all. Realizing that love, no matter how pure, can't save something that was never real to begin with. So here I am, a month after the breakup, still trying to piece myself together, still waking up every morning hoping that the pain feels a little less sharp. Still wondering if he ever loved me, truly loved me, or if I was just the comfort he needed until something better came along. I don't know the answer yet, but I do know this. I'm done being an option. And maybe that's where my real story begins. When everything finally sank in, when the puzzle pieces clicked into place and the illusion shattered completely, I broke. Not in a graceful, cinematic way, but in the raw, ugly, uncontrollable kind of way that strips you bare. My heart felt like it had been ripped open, and all I could feel was rage. Thick, hot, unfiltered rage. I remember sitting on my bed, phone clenched in my hand, trembling. My thoughts were spiraling. Anger, betrayal, disbelief, all mixing into something dangerous. I couldn't stop replaying his lies in my head. You know I'm just stressed about work. I don't have the mental space for a relationship right now. You mean the world to me? Angelina. Every word now sounded like poison. In that moment, I didn't care about calm or closure. I wanted him to feel something, guilt, fear, anything. So impulsively, I texted one of his friends, someone he was still close to. I typed furiously, my hands shaking. Tell him that if he doesn't stop lying, I'll tell his parents everything. I didn't even think it through. I didn't actually plan to do it. His parents had always been kind to me. They treated me like family. But the anger inside me was volcanic. It just spilled out, uncontrolled. I wanted to hurt him the way he had hurt me, even if just for a moment. As soon as I hit send, guilt started creeping in. I stared at the message, watching the delivered tick appear, and instantly regretted it. That wasn't me. I wasn't the type to threaten or lash out. But when you love someone deeply, betrayal doesn't just wound you, it changes you. A few minutes later, the friend replied, "Angelina, I think you should calm down. He's already a mess about all this." A mess? The irony burned. He was a mess? He had spent months deceiving 2 women, manipulating emotions, living a double life. And now he was the one who needed sympathy? I didn't respond. Instead, I blocked the friend, then blocked him, everywhere. WhatsApp, Instagram, even his number. I didn't trust myself not to reach out again. I knew that if I saw his name pop up, I'd crumble. Blocking him wasn't about punishment anymore. It was survival. But silence doesn't bring peace right away. That night, my mind refused to rest. I kept pacing around my room, replaying everything, from our first date to the last fight, trying to pinpoint the exact moment when he stopped loving me. My heart kept asking questions my brain couldn't answer. By morning, I decided I needed something more. Closure. But not from him, from her. The girl he had been seeing. I hesitated for hours before reaching out. Part of me felt it was pointless. What good would it do to talk to her? But another part of me, the part that was still burning for truth, needed her to know. I didn't want her to live in the same illusion I had been trapped in. So I messaged her. My hands were shaking as I typed, "Hi, I'm sorry for reaching out like this, but I think we need to talk about his name." She replied within minutes. Her response was polite, cautious, the way someone sounds when they're unsure if they're being trapped. "Okay, what's this about?" I took a deep breath and sent the screenshots, the messages he'd sent me while he was supposedly pursuing her. The "I miss you," the "you'll always be my person," the "I just need time but I still love you." I sent it all. For a moment she didn't reply. Then her messages started coming in bursts. Disbelief, confusion, and then anger. "Wait, he told me you were his ex, that you broke up a long time ago. He said you couldn't handle his lifestyle. I can't believe this." I just stared at the screen, feeling a strange mix of vindication and sadness. I didn't enjoy proving that he was a liar. I just wanted the truth to be seen. For both of us. Finally, she wrote, "Your ex is actually an asshole. He told me he liked me. Said you were just someone from his past he was trying to stay friendly with." I could almost hear the disgust in her words. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than pain, clarity. We kept talking. For over an hour, we compared stories, dates, timelines, conversations. It was like assembling a crime scene. Every overlap, every inconsistency, every lie fit together perfectly now. He had been juggling us both, feeding us different versions of himself. To me, he was the stressed, overworked man who needed time to figure out his life. To her, he was the confident, emotionally available guy ready for something new. The duality was nauseating. At one point, she said something that stuck with me. "You know, I think he just likes control. He wants to be wanted by everyone." And she was right. It wasn't about love for him. It was about validation. He loved being the center of attention, the one holding emotional power over others. By the end of our conversation, we weren't enemies. We were allies in heartbreak. Two women caught in the same web of lies, finally untangling ourselves. Before ending the chat, she said softly, "You deserve better, Angelina." We both do. I stared at that message for a long time. It felt strange to receive kindness from someone who had unknowingly been part of my pain. But it also healed something small inside me. Maybe the universe was reminding me that not everyone was cruel, not everyone lied. After that, I didn't cry. Not that night. Not the next. The sadness was still there, but it had changed form. It wasn't sharp anymore. It was dull, heavy, like a bruise fading slowly. Blocking him had given me space, and talking to her had given me perspective. But now came the hardest part, living with the silence. The urge to check his profile, to see if he'd posted something, to wonder if he missed me. It was all still there. But I resisted. Every time I wanted to reach out, I reminded myself of that night I found the photos. Of the lies. Of how small I had felt. And I promised myself, never again. Still, healing isn't linear. Some days I woke up angry. Some days I missed him so much it hurt to breathe. Other days I felt nothing at all. But in those quiet, in-between moments, I began to rediscover myself. For the first time in years, I wasn't living in reaction to someone else's moods. I was just existing. Broken, yes, but free. The girl he cheated with and I didn't stay in touch after that. We didn't need to. We had both learned what we needed to, that he wasn't worth our pain. And as the days passed, something shifted inside me. I began to understand that closure doesn't come from confrontation or revenge. It comes from reclaiming your peace. I still don't know if he ever felt guilty, or if he's still with her, spinning new lies. But I've stopped asking, because the truth isn't about him anymore. It's about me, and the version of myself I'm slowly finding again. A few days after everything with that girl, I found myself doing something I swore I wouldn't. I unblocked him. It wasn't because I wanted him back. I just needed answers. There was still this hollow, burning question that refused to quiet down inside me. Why didn't you just tell me? So one evening, when the silence in my apartment felt too heavy, I sent him a message. Simple, direct, but loaded with everything I had been holding back. Why didn't you just tell me you were interested in someone else? I would have stepped away myself. You didn't need to lie. I stared at the screen after hitting send, my pulse racing. I didn't expect a reply, but a part of me hoped he'd at least try to be honest this time. He read it within minutes. I could see the typing. Bubble appear, then disappear, then appear again. It went on for almost a full minute before his message finally came through. Because my feelings for you were gone, Angelina. They ended one day, just like that. And a few days later, I started talking to her. It wasn't cheating. It just happened. That was it. No apology, no explanation, no trace of remorse. Just a detached justification for breaking my heart. I read his words over and over again, each time feeling them pierce deeper. My feelings ended one day. As if 7 years could just evaporate overnight. As if love was a switch you could flick off the moment it became inconvenient. I wanted to scream at him. You don't get to rewrite the story like that. But instead, I just sat there in disbelief. So I asked him again. 5 days after your feelings ended, you started talking to her? That doesn't happen out of nowhere. Be honest. Were you talking to her while we were still together? For a while, there was no response. Then came his reply. We were friends before, but it wasn't romantic until after we ended. That one sentence was another lie, one I could prove. Because I had already seen their old messages. The girl had sent me screenshots from months ago, months before he and I even had our so-called breakup. Their chats weren't platonic. They were full of flirtation, late-night confessions, and subtle emotional intimacy. I scrolled through those screenshots again, my chest tightening with every line. I can talk to you about anything. You get me in a way no one else does. I wish I'd met you sooner. And then the one that broke me completely. Angelina and I have been over for a while now. We're just trying to end things peacefully. That message was from a month before he told me he needed space. My hands went cold as I read it again. We were still together then, still celebrating anniversaries, still making plans, still saying I love you. And yet to her, he was already pretending I was gone. He wasn't just lying, he was erasing me. When I confronted him with those screenshots, I expected at least a hint of guilt. Maybe shock, maybe shame, but his response was infuriatingly casual. That was just me trying to make things easier. I didn't want her to think she was the reason for our breakup. I could barely process the audacity. So you lied to her and to me? I typed furiously. You made me believe you were struggling with work while telling her I was already out of the picture. How could you do that? He replied after a pause. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just didn't know how to end things properly. It was unbelievable. 7 years. And the best he could say was that he didn't know how. At that moment, I realized something brutal. He wasn't remorseful because to him, there was nothing to be sorry for. In his mind, cheating wasn't defined by time or loyalty. It was defined by convenience. I asked him one last thing, not because I wanted an apology, but because I wanted to hear the truth from his own mouth. When exactly did you start falling for her? His reply came slower this time. I don't know. Maybe a year ago, but I didn't act on it until recently. That was the final confirmation. A year. He had been emotionally checked out for a year, while still keeping me around, feeding me false hope, letting me believe that his distance was just temporary. I felt sick. Every conversation we had during that time, every "I love you," every "don't worry, I just need time," had been a lie layered over guilt. He hadn't loved me for months. He had been slowly preparing his exit, making sure he had someone else waiting on the other side before letting go of me. It was never about love. It was about convenience, about never being alone. The girl told me once, he said you were his past. Now I finally understood. To him, I wasn't even a person anymore. Just a chapter he'd quietly rewritten so his new story could look cleaner. After that night, I didn't text him again. I didn't block him this time, though. I didn't need to. The silence between us was heavier than any block list. But his words echoed in my mind for days. My feelings ended one day. It haunted me. Because love doesn't just end one day. Not real love. Real love fades slowly, painfully, with explanations and regrets and tears. Not with a cold message and a timeline that makes no sense. I started going back through old photos, old texts, searching for signs I'd missed. I wanted to find that exact one day he claimed his feelings ended. Was it after a fight? After a message from her? After a dinner where I told him I believed in him? The thought made my stomach twist. Because the truth was, while I was busy loving him through his silence, he was already loving someone else behind mine. For weeks, I kept replaying everything, wondering if I'd done something wrong, if I'd been too much, too emotional, too demanding. But deep down, I knew it wasn't me. It never was. People don't cheat because of what's missing in their partner. They cheat because of what's missing in themselves. He lacked honesty, courage, empathy, the basic decency to end something before starting something new. And no matter how much I loved him, I couldn't fix that. It took me a long time to accept it, but eventually I did. Love doesn't make someone loyal. Character does. And he had none. So I stopped waiting for closure. I stopped hoping for apologies that would never come. The truth was already in front of me. Ugly, undeniable, final. That's when I finally deleted everything. The photos, the messages, the screenshots, all of it. I didn't want to keep proof of his betrayal anymore. Proof wasn't power. It was poison. And as I watched the last image disappear from my phone, I whispered to myself, almost like a prayer. You didn't lose him, Angelina. He lost you. For the first time, I actually believed it. After I deleted everything, something inside me finally went quiet. Not peaceful, not healed, just quiet. The kind of silence that comes after a storm, when the air still smells like rain, but the thunder has passed. For the first time in months, I wasn't checking my phone, waiting for his name to light up the screen. I wasn't looking for signs or closure or explanations. I was just existing, broken but standing. That's when I made a decision. I wasn't going to fall in love again. Not anytime soon, not carelessly, not ever. At least that's what I told myself. Love had taken too much from me. It had turned me into a version of myself I barely recognized. Anxious, insecure, constantly second-guessing my worth. I didn't want to feel that way ever again. So I chose something different this time. Myself. I threw myself into work. Every ounce of pain, every memory that used to drown me, I turned into fuel. I started waking up early, hitting the gym, applying for promotions, signing up for projects that scared me. I wasn't trying to escape him anymore. I was trying to find myself beyond him. My parents noticed the change too. They didn't ask too many questions. Maybe they saw the exhaustion in my eyes and decided not to dig. But one night, my mother said something softly while we were sitting on the balcony after dinner. Angelina, life doesn't end because love fails. Sometimes it begins there. Her words stayed with me. I knew she didn't understand everything. She didn't know about the lies, the other girl, the betrayal. I'd spared her that pain. But she was right. My life couldn't just revolve around something that was already dead. So when she and my father started hinting about marriage, "You should meet someone good. We'll find the right person for you," I didn't argue. I didn't protest or roll my eyes like I used to. I simply said, "When you think it's right, you can go ahead." It wasn't surrender. It was just acceptance. I wasn't going to chase love anymore. If it had to come, it would. If it didn't, I'd still be fine. For months, that's how things went. I worked, I kept busy, I learned to enjoy my own company. Some nights loneliness crept in, but it wasn't unbearable. It was quieter now, manageable. I could live with it. Then, one afternoon, as I sat at my desk finishing a report, I saw a notification pop up on my phone. His name. My stomach dropped instantly. At first I thought it was a mistake, maybe a random text or some accidental message. But then I opened it. "Hi, Angelina. I've been thinking about you lately." My hands froze over the keyboard. For a second, I just stared at the screen, trying to process the words. It had been months. Months of silence, of deliberate distance, of rebuilding myself from the ashes he left behind. And now he was back. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Not yet. I locked my phone and went back to work, pretending it didn't matter. But it did. The moment I saw his name, old emotions started stirring like ghosts. Anger, longing, confusion, nostalgia. It was terrifying how easily the past could still make my heart race. That night when I got home, there was another message waiting. "I know I don't deserve a reply, but please hear me out once. I really need to talk." I sat there in silence, reading the words over and over again. My mind screamed no, but my heart, the same stupid heart that had believed him once, whispered, "Just see what he has to say." After almost half an hour, I typed a short reply. "What do you want?" The response came almost instantly, as if he had been waiting by his phone. "I want to make things right. I've realized how much I messed up, and I can't live with the way I left things between us. I still love you, Angelina. I want to come back." I felt my chest tighten. Come back. Those two words hit me harder than I expected. Once upon a time, they would have been everything I wanted to hear. I used to dream about this. Him realizing his mistake, coming back, choosing me again. But now, the reality of it didn't feel like a dream. It felt like a test. I didn't reply that night. Instead, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind a battlefield of emotions. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to tell him he didn't get to just come back after destroying everything. Another part, the one that still remembered his laughter, his touch, the way he used to look at me, wanted to know if he was telling the truth this time. But deep down, beneath all the noise, there was something else too. Peace. Because for the first time, he was the one chasing and I was the one choosing. The next day, he called. I didn't pick up the first few times, but he kept trying. Finally, I answered. "Angelina," he said softly, his voice trembling slightly. "Please don't hang up." I didn't say anything. I just listened. He started talking about how he'd realized he'd made a mistake, How the girl he'd left me for wasn't who he thought she was. How nothing felt right after I was gone. "I thought I could move on, but I can't," he said. "I've tried. You're the only person who ever really understood me." His words might have once melted me, but now they just sounded hollow, rehearsed, predictable. I waited for him to finish before speaking. "You didn't lose me because of her," I said quietly. "You lost me because you lied. You could have told me the truth. You could have let me go with dignity, but you didn't." He went silent for a moment. Then, almost pleading, he said, "People make mistakes, Angelina. Can't we start over?" Start over. As if love were a video game you could just restart after losing all your lives. "You didn't make a mistake," I said finally. "You made a choice, and now I'm making mine." He tried again, softer this time. "Please, just one chance. I've changed." I almost laughed, and not out of cruelty, but out of disbelief. The irony of him saying that after all the pain he caused was unbearable. "No," I said simply. "You haven't changed. You're just lonely." The silence that followed felt heavy. I could hear him breathing, like he wanted to say more but didn't know how. Then quietly I ended the call. After hanging up, I sat there for a long time. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding, not from sadness, but from relief. For the first time, I had chosen myself. That night, I wrote in my journal, "He came back, but I didn't." And that sentence, short, firm, final, felt like closure. He had expected me to still be the same girl who would forgive easily, who would confuse guilt with love. But that version of me no longer existed. I had built myself piece by piece, scar by scar, and I wasn't about to let the same person who broke me walk back into the home I had rebuilt from ruins. So I turned off my phone, closed my journal, and went to bed, not as the girl he betrayed, but as the woman who finally walked away. After that night, after I made the choice to walk away, something inside me shifted in ways I hadn't expected. The rawness of the pain dulled into something like a scar, tender when touched, but no longer bleeding every day. I learned to breathe without waiting for his name to appear on my phone. I learned to spend weekends without replaying old conversations. Slowly, almost without fanfare, I started living again. Life in Boston, the city my parents and I had called home for years, moved forward with its usual push and hum. My parents, who had always been quietly worried about me, began talking openly about my future. It felt strange at first, the idea of them arranging meetings like relatives in the old country. But here we were, in an American apartment lined with photos of family holidays, and they were insisting they'd found someone they thought I should meet. Maybe it was because they feared my loneliness. Maybe they simply wanted the steady life they imagined for their daughter. Either way, I was tired of being defined by my past heartbreak. I was ready for something different. They introduced me to him as Ethan, an earnest, thoughtful man my parents had met through a mutual friend. He worked in tech in Cambridge, and from the moment we met at a quiet cafe near Harvard Square, there was a calm in him that felt deliberate, not performative. He asked about my work without turning it into small talk. He told stories about his childhood in Ohio that made my mother laugh. He listened. That might seem insignificant, but after months of being gaslit and deceived, listening felt like salvation. Our first few meetings were gentle. We took walks along the Charles River, talked about books and the way the city smells after rain, and met for long dinners where we mostly listened to each other. Ethan never rushed me. He respected the spaces I kept to myself and the times I wanted to be alone. He knew I had scars and didn't treat them as things to be fixed. He treated them as parts of me that deserved patience. Time passed. A slow, steady kind of connection formed, not the blinding, all-consuming passion of movies, but the kind that builds on quiet Sunday mornings, shared errands, and meals made together. When my parents suggested moving forward, it wasn't out of pressure but an honest hope for my happiness. I agreed to an engagement, not because I needed to replace something broken, but because I felt safe imagining a future with someone who would walk beside me rather than take from me. Then, a week before the little engagement party we planned at our apartment, the past walked in through our front door. I was standing in the hallway, smoothing my dress when the bell rang. My father opened it, and the world narrowed to a single terrible point. There he was, the man who had been my whole life for 7 years, now standing in the doorway as if he had dropped in by chance. Only his posture betrayed him. He looked smaller, humbled, like a boy who'd been caught. "Angelina," he said, voice breaking slightly. He glanced at my parents, then back at me. "I know I shouldn't be here, but I had to see you." My chest tightened. For a second I couldn't move. Then my mother, ever the gentle force in the room, called me over and said softly, "Angelina, he wants to speak to you." I walked into the living room on autopilot and watched him fumble with the words as he tried to build his case. "I heard about your engagement," he said. "I made a mistake. I thought I could move on. I can't. Please marry me instead. Give me another chance." Everything inside me behaved like a reflexive old wound. There was a flicker of the girl I used to be, the one who would have dropped everything to plead for him. But that girl was gone. The pain had changed her. She had learned to stand with raw edges and not crumble every time someone asked for forgiveness. I looked at him for a long beat. The man I saw before me had the audacity of someone who believed apologies could erase years of lying. He expected me to be undone. He expected me to beg. He expected me to fall into his arms like a prodigal who'd been waiting. I felt neither pity nor the old electric hunger. I felt clarity, a cool, steady understanding. "You left," I said, voice low but steady. "You lied. You made me small for your convenience. You chose someone else while asking me to stay as a placeholder. And now you want me to erase that pain because you're lonely?" He tried to reach for my hand. I stepped back. "It wasn't just a mistake," I continued. "It was a decision. A decision to be dishonest, to manipulate trust. You don't get to come back months later and ask for a rewrite." We stood in the living room, words hanging like a storm cloud. My parents watched, eyes wide but resolute. Ethan, who had been standing politely in the corner, stepped forward with a small, supportive hand on my shoulder. The gesture, humble, unobtrusive, felt like an anchor. The man in front of me, finally seeing no leverage left, faltered. "I love you," he said. The phrase landed with the weight of something rehearsed. I smiled, but it was a small, sad thing. "You love the version of me who waited. She's not here anymore." My father, a man who rarely raised his voice, asked him to leave. The man left without protest, shoulders rounded, swallowed by the winter air as he walked down the stoop. When the door clicked shut behind him, an enormous, inexplicable lightness filled me. It was not victory so much as release. 2 weeks later, I stood across from Ethan in a small room in our apartment, ring in hand. My mother brushed away a tear, my father beamed with approval, and my friends, those who had been there through the worst nights, stood quietly in the back, smiling. It wasn't a grand affair. There were no fireworks, no dramatic declarations. Instead, there was a deep, reverent calm. Ethan looked at me and said, "I promise to be honest, to listen, to stand with you, to never make you feel small." Those were the vows I wanted, not just promises of love, but promises of safety and respect. When I said yes, it felt like reclaiming everything I had lost, my confidence, my dignity, my right to choose a life that didn't require me to erase my true self. We married in a simple ceremony in a small chapel not far from the river. There was my family, Ethan's parents who'd driven up from New Jersey, and a few close friends. The sun was generous that afternoon, and the whole city felt like it was breathing with us. When we walked out of the chapel hand in hand, the world didn't explode into miracles. But it felt steady, honest, and full of possibility. That night, as we stood on the apartment balcony overlooking the city, lights twinkling like distant promises, Ethan slipped his arm around me. "You look peaceful," he said softly. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "I am," I replied. And I meant it. I had loved and lost, been unmade by deceit, and then rebuilt myself piece by piece. I had learned that closure doesn't always come from apologies or confessions. It comes from making deliberate choices about who you let into your life. As the city hummed below, I realized something deeper. Sometimes the person who deserves to be in your future isn't the one who once set your heart ablaze. Sometimes it's the one who shows up steady, with open hands and an honest heart. And in that steadiness, I found a hopeful kind of love that felt like home. You know what I learned through all of this? Love isn't supposed to break you just to prove it's real. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can ever do is walk away. Not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring about yourself. I used to think losing him would destroy me, but it didn't. It freed me. And now I know. Peace feels better than chaos, and self-respect lasts longer than any apology ever could.